Okay, so yeah, I'll try and take it slow. I'm a normal fast chatter. But first I want to put across something that applies to both globe earthers and flat earthers alike. I've made up something, and it's just more of a joke, but it's called the flock mock paradox. It's where people love to gang up on people and literally just tell them something that they don't know, even though they don't know it themselves. So here's a little summit. Can you all see that?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, it's just basically on one side of the argument, a flat earther saying, I think the earth's flat, as this is all we observe, measure from our reference frame. Surveyors mostly use plane trigonometry, so they neglect the curve. This is evidence. Globe earther comes along and says, don't be ridiculous. You're working on such a small scale. When you work on much larger scales, surveyors must account for the curvature or the maths are incorrect. So the earth is definitely a sphere. Next, flip the argument, and globe earthers say, I think the earth is a sphere because of this thing called gravity. We can observe it, measure it on a local basis, and we know that gravity forms spherical shaped planets. So we can test it, we know it exists, it backs a claim, and then the flat earther says the opposite. Don't be ridiculous. That's only on the local scale. When you do it on a much massive, larger universal scale, gravity fails by a factor of 10. And that's why they need dark matter and dark energy to fudge it. Okay, so there's me. I'm right on the middle of the fence, where I love the work that flat earthers do to prove it, and I hate the fact that globe earthers go around pretending that their model actually works when it doesn't. Completely. So getting through it is just a quick recap on what's happened in history, but I'm going to go through formation of matter. It's loads of topics that have been discussed on the show ages. So formation of matter, mass, density, a field, the fields of the earth, field relationships, failures of gravity, and then connect this all to religion and God, and then conclude. So just to go through it, I think personally this is my own thing, and I'll present some science later to back it all up, but gravity is electrostatic. Okay, and I also think that the background electrostatic potential energy field, 0-point energy field, is a fluid, or considered a fluid medium, which we're all in. So it's like a sea, and we're all in the sea of this energy field medium. Not only that, it's kind of like quantum field theory, where matter itself is not physical matter. It's a nested hierarchy of fields. So you obviously all know the particle wave duality, blah, blah, blah. I won't go into it. Yeah, and obviously all physical matter and energy seeks the path of least resistance to achieve its equilibrium when it's taken out of equilibrium in a state of entropy. All the current theories of gravity confirm the dimensions of the universe incorrect, and therefore a flat earth then becomes a viable option. And yes, God itself, God in all religions, is the personification of this energy field that creates everything. Okay? So first, formation of matter. I don't know anyone knew, or if everyone knew this, but Democritus was a flat earther, and he was the first one to propose that there was such things as atoms, lots of tiny little balls building up, and he was actually a flat earther. He's depicted on a lot of old artwork as laughing at a globe, because he was coupled with another philosopher who thought it was a globe, and he was always laughing at him, saying, "Are you sure, you idiot?" Yeah. So either way, the common simplified version of what we understand today is that classical mechanics accept that these atoms are physical building blocks for elements, and quantum mechanics considers that state of duality, that in between the two, or in quintessence, it's also a nested field, like what I was just saying. Particles don't exist, they are just a point source in the energy field. Okay. Formation of mass. So for things to stick together locally in chemistry is known, well, sorry, the top bit is just to say that modern globe science physicists thinks it's this Higgs field, which is the energy field that created the the fundamental building blocks. But locally, it's all known as chemical bonding, which is electrostatic repulsion and attraction, which grabs in different particles to create elements. Also, that happens, as a side note, is spontaneous creation. So when things collide, excessive energy is created, let's say, which accounts for kind of like spontaneous creation, something from nothing, which they all know about. So density, which is all the flat earth argument, which is buoyancy and density. I fully support that, but I also support that there must be a medium for this to happen in, even in a vacuum. They already say, yeah, there's vacuum energy, which you can't shield against. So all the elements stick together, they create all these 92 elements, all the molecules stick together, create all these 92 elements. The periodic tables all sorted by density as well as electric charge. I don't know if everyone knew that, but this one is, put it that way. There are versions of it. But obviously then there is a order of magnitude of this density. So you've got very dense at the bottom, very less dense at the top, let's say. Okay. So this one will take one or 2 minutes, but I'm just going to skip through this so I can provide all the backup paperwork that confirms everything I'm putting here. But you've got Newton assumed gravity was connected to this divine electric field, which he called God. Basically, he considered God because obviously he was religious. But he couldn't connect it to an electrical field because electrical theory hadn't really been developed then. And also, he considered it far too weak. Now, it's a massive point in as much as making the mistake of choosing a spherical surface for charge or a flat surface. A flat surface is known to distribute the charge across the surface and build up on the edges. A sphere will equally distribute the charge all over. We know that there's a field there, or we know that there's something there. And from a globe Earth aspect, it's gravity. There is definitely gravity. From a flat Earth aspect, you must say that there is ether because obviously, well, not must say, but a lot of flat earthers believe in ether theory because it disproves the motion of Earth through the Michelson-Morley experiment. But let me skip anyway. So Michelson-Morley experiment, obviously done the ether experiment, and a lot of misconception with a null experiment. The null experiment was, no, they didn't find the required velocity from the fringe shift. It wasn't, no, we didn't find ether, because there was a small, tiny background detection of drift. So it was not a null result. It was a non-null positive result, but not the required one for what they expected of a spin of the Earth. Anyway, Einstein removed that ether, replaced it, photoelectric effect, photon, and still needed to explain in maths it's parallel transport of how you can unbend space-time for the bending of space-time. So he needed properties of space and come up with superfluid vacuum theory, which I've heard on the show loads. It's helium-4 basically, or the Einstein-Bose condensate. So they're proposing, yes, it does exist. Once ether's been removed, you've got masses of Nobel Prize winning physicists saying Einstein is wrong. His bending in space-time is total nonsense. And the prime two, in my eyes, are Louis Essen and Ernst Mach, or Mark. Being Louis Essen was the first guy to invent the atomic clock and the first guy to accurately measure the speed of light. He wrote papers against Einstein saying, you're talking a load of rubbish. But going through, obviously, Michelson, Robert Millikan, Ernst Rutherford, nuclear physics, Herbert Ives, all of them were completely against this bending in space-time, and all were in support of ether. So this is one key point which matches up with the first. Tesla assumed he'd be able to extract a lot of electrical energy and transfer that either underground or through the sky. He achieved it mathematically using a globe, but in reality, when it come round to it, it didn't produce as much energy as he could get free energy. So that's just one plus on the flat earther side. To balance out, as we're talking about equilibriums and density and electricity as a fluid, Robert Millikan done his oil drop experiment, which it discovered the elementary charge, but what it actually did is two charge plates drop in little tiny droplets of oil through it, and by adding charge to the system, he could levitate oil droplets and adding more charge, shoot them upwards. So it's kind of like a counterbalance once you account for ether. So George's, is it Lemaitre, whatever his name is, the Big Bang guy, he thought of all of space as a fluid. So all I'm trying to get across is that there is a 0-point energy throughout the whole universe, which has a creational effect, which also has a gravitational effect, not gravity. But also Boyd Bushman, I don't know whether everyone's seen that. He does drop tests, you know, like they do in a vacuum as standard, but he does it in Lockheed Skunk Works, just in the normal air. And he's dropping two bowling balls of equal mass. One's got two massive neodymium magnets at opposite poles. So they're creating a big supermassive field, and he's dropping them, and every single time the magnets are dropping afterwards. So they're causing a resistance. There is a resistance beyond air, put it that way. So that is the big bit out of the way. So Earth has an electrostatic field. Richard Feynman done a lecture on this, and that's where I've got the left drawing from. The right drawing is just nicked off the internet to show you how the layers work. And it's from ground, which is the surface of Earth, up to 31 miles, and every meter in height exceeds or adds 100 to 150 volts of potential energy. So this is not actual charge, this is potential. Potential cannot be shielded, as you see in the old Cavendish things. Oh yeah, it can't be electrostatics. I'm shielding it with a Faraday cage. You can't shield potential, especially gradients. So up from the surface upwards is positive, down every meter down underneath Earth is negative. And that's just a relative thing that man's put on that. So there is definitely a field, electrostatic field, coming off of Earth, whether it's flat or spherical. And just as a side note, air pressure becomes 0.1% of the surface value at exactly the same altitude as the field of electric becomes 0.1%. I can't say that's causality, but I'm just saying that there is a suggested relationship between gravity, holding in air pressure gradient, so on. When I should just be talking about energy, 0-point energy. But I think just calling it electrostatics is a bit more welcoming. However, it brings me beautifully onto this slide, which is where I get my belief from it. Obviously, gravity and the electrostatic field are alike, have similarities and also differences, but the differences, again, are the likes of electrostatic pulls and repels, and gravity only pulls. Well, that's nonsense if you need dark energy in the system. That is the repulsive. Me calling it electrostatics, it's off-throwing because that implies charge, and it isn't. It's electrostatic charge happens when you charge something or run something with motion in through a field of potential, and that's what creates the charge. I'm more talking the field of potential, but there's thousands of names for it. The ether, the ZPE, 0-point energy. I just like calling the whole thing electrostatics because I do believe the whole system is a system of energy fields, a hierarchy, nested energy fields. All matter, all light, EM spectrum is just basically extended to be matter, as well as what we already know. This is the core document. That, put it this way, this is I'll be completely open. It's published in what's known as the Galilean Electrodynamics. It's an offshoot publication for electrics out of the mainstream. Okay, so the guy who actually wrote this paper was personal friends with the guy who run the publication, and he published it, whereas mainstream science wouldn't publish this. Okay, but to add credibility to him, this guy, Morton F. Spears, he's basically a PhD from MIT on electrical engineering. He was a commander of a nuclear sub, was in the Navy, and an atomic officer for the Northeast of United States. He then, when he retired from the Navy, set up a company called Spears Association, and he then sold his company to Lockheed. And when he retired, he worked on a theory that gravity is electrostatic. This is just one paper in a 100-page theory that he's got at the same address there, and I can share this document as well. I've got no holdings back on it. But this guy I've looked into very deep, and this is a core of my belief, is that gravity that they're measuring, that everyone's saying, yeah, that's gravity, is just electrostatics or background energy. Okay, so either way, what he done is he just calculated, this is not an actual physical experiment, but he calculated the electrostatic attraction between two hydrogen atoms a meter apart, and he come up to an almost identical value to big G. So I can share that paper with you as well. So just to go back, it's only a 3-page paper, which, as I say, forms part. He does a lot on permittivity and permittivity, however you say it. But he's done a lot of work on this whole theory. He's got a whole complete theory on the electric universe, let's say. But for some reason, the electric universe theory, I've never heard of them mention this guy. But I've researched him, and he's legit. His actual daughter works for Iowa State, and she publishes all his papers. And the link's up there. If you just search for Morton Spears electrostatic gravity, he'll pop up straight away. And she's like a research professor, so she's definitely got her own dad right. But either way, we are going on to the failures of gravity, and in my personal opinion, this failure of gravity calculates their sun at 93 million miles. If you remove their failures of gravity, the sun then becomes 3,200 miles away. Now, I fully understand that there's no distance to the sun, but I'm just saying that's the outcome of when you get the total observable universe, remove all of their fudges, and then it comes to a real small and local dimension universe. So galaxy rotation curve problem, I don't know whether anyone's heard of this. It's a bit difficult to get your head around to start with, but it's real simple. It's like scale invariance, if anyone's seen Jaron's video on that. What it is they're using Newton's and Einstein's gravity to detect how fast a spiraling galaxy is turning. And what they're getting is a mismatch of the velocity of how it spins on the inside, like with a record player, than there is on the outside. And it's out by a factor of 10. So means two things, one of two things in my head. A, there is such a thing as this dark matter that we've been searching for 90 odd years, not found a single thing, or they've got the measurements wrong. And that's simply it. If you draw that in, then the measurements calculate, and that spin of that galaxy is supposed to be going the right speed. It's just that it's so far out now that they pushed that sun out, pushed the universe out, expanded it. Hubble expanded it. Cosmological constant expanded it. and now it's so far out that they have to patch it all back up again. That's my personal opinion. And then from the dark matter, Vera Rubin done extensive work in the 50s. From that dark matter, Lawrence Krauss talks about it was his idea originally, but he didn't even win the Nobel Prize for dark energy. And they basically said, right, all the visible matter plus all this dark, mysterious, godlike matter, put that all together, how much energy is there needed to get it to zero, to get it all to balance out? And they found it's the worst catastrophe in the whole of physics. It was 10 to the 120 wrong, and therefore they had to invent another energy or another mysterious thing, which now constitutes 69% of their model. So as you see in the top right hand corner there, 5%, that 5% normal matter is all we can see. All the rest of it is made up. Basically made up because of wrong calculations. The sums are wrong. Of that 5%, only 0.5% are stars and planets. The 4.5% is just hydrogen gas spread out. So 0.5% of their model is right. And I think this is a massive trick that flat earthers haven't got onto, because this is their data. This is them proving themselves wrong, and their model is wrong. And they think, oh no, there is this dark stuff. We'll just patch it up. There definitely exists. 90 years later, billions in funding, CERN, everywhere, all particle accelerators, not found a smidgen of evidence. So it's them that have proved themselves wrong. So now connecting this all to religion, I'm going to skip through this bit because I'm anti-religious. I think that just everyone's talking about the same thing, whether you are religious or not religious, either way. Obviously, some matching up things that I believe that religion was science before science. It's just one long extending religion, because all science is just saying we're going to document stuff now. And obviously this field that I've been talking about, you can't document it. Well, you can, because you obviously see it, or it has an effect on your experiments. So either way, just matching up things like what religious people would say and what the Bibles say, their cliche statements, versus what scientific proof there is connecting the statement that I think God is electric. It's just their description of electric. Almighty great power in the sky, lightning and thunder, obviously, the life giver. Nothing can survive without bioelectricity, whether fish, whether mammal, whatever. Repent your sins. How I believe it is the whole thread of you've got a soul, which is your bioelectricity. If you charge that up all your life really positive, you're going to go up into the heaven with all the other positive energy, i.e. the Van Allen belts and where the sun is. Or if you charge it up negative, you're going to go down to the hell, which is, as I said, with that relative where ground is zero, you're going to go down to all the negative. And then the flip side of that, obviously your matter, your body will go into the dirt anyway, or get burnt however you want. But it's the spirit, the soul, let's say, the all elusive soul. After you die, that escapes, that energy escapes. And if you've done good and you've got a positive spirit, you go up. If you've done bad and you've got a negative, but it also accounts for you can repent for your sins, meaning you could do really bad all your life and then just charge your soul up right at the last bit like Scrooge did, and he'll be going to heaven. You know what I'm saying? So it's there's so much relating in my mind how I'm connecting that to them saying, yeah, this is how it works. Lightbringer, obviously, EM spectrum, something from nothing, the pair production I was talking about earlier, excess energy created off of collisions and interactions, let's say. Source of all creation, they think it's this Higgs field. I personally believe in ether, this all-encompassing energy field. Instructions of creation, DNA is actually charged particles linking. The creator of all living things, chemical bonding process, bringing things together, and the instructions for what does what. and heaven and hell. And I put up a couple of things there. I don't know whether anyone's looked into Birkeland currents or magnetic rope connecting the sun to Earth. NASA's had to say, yeah, we've detected it now. But they've actually, Kristen Birkeland, which was James Van Allen's right-hand man, he studied the magnetic fields up at the Northern Lights and actually documented them and whatnot, and went through and actually postulated that the sun and all planets are interconnected by tubes of electric or tubes of magnetism transferring energy. And then obviously beneath us, you've got telluric currents, which are similar but the opposite, underneath, running through massive charged up, negatively charged or positive in a negative medium. Okay, so my conclusions out of all my research that I've been doing this 5 years, looking into flat Earth and comparing and seeing all the failings of the globe Earth, I think gravity is electrostatic. I don't know if anyone's aware, but gravity in the globe Earth model creates everything flat anyway. Yeah, the universe is flat. It's a hierarchy of flatness. You've got the universe, all galaxies are created flat. You only get a spherical or misshapen galaxy when two flat ones collide. Milky Way's flat, the solar system's flat. It's a nested flat disk system. But all of the main guys, Newton, Faraday, Maxwell, Tesla, Einstein, they all had issues with their calculations. And their common denominator in my mind was that they selected a globe as a sphere where the electric will overpower this mysterious gravity force. Whereas if they would have selected a flat Earth model, it would have been electric all the way through. And then that obviously pulls in all the universe, corrects all their errors. Not that I'm saying that flippantly. I've got no evidence of that. But modern, as I said there, it's only 0.5% we can account for in the globe Earth model, or they can account for in the globe Earth model. And that little bit on the right hand side is just to say that depending if you've got a spear, not a sphere, you charge that up and the electricity builds up just above the point or on the tip. So as you get less and less curve, it holds less and less charge, and therefore this background energy is basically the flat Earth's electrostatic field, which allows us it's a sea of energy. That's how I like to see it, because I like it being explained as a fluid, because it works exactly like that. Current and electricity and all that lot is explained as a fluid. It's exactly the same of how density and buoyancy work, exactly the same. So I think that's it. Yeah, end of presentation.